we want to welcome everybody here. We have a nice program for the evening, and I hope everybody will enjoy it. I'm not going to say any more. I want to introduce Jerry Murphy first, and we'll start the ball rolling.
Okay, no, thank you ever so much. Well, firstly, you're all very welcome here at the Booney House in Churchtown for our annual Sean and Clarach night. Normally we have this night in December, or January I should say, January, usually the last Friday in January.
Irish Jacobinism and Sean Clarach MacDonald. Irish Jacobinism is adjudged to have evolved in 6 distinct phases, beginning with the accession of James II in 1685 and ending in 1766 during the reign of George III. This evening's celebration will dwell on the flowering and the waning of Jacobinism, from its euphoria under the Stuarts to bitter post-Culloden realism and recriminations. Throughout this period, our bards and poets fanned the flames of nationalism, seeing in the Stuart cause a means by which their country might regain a semblance of nationhood. Historians reflecting on the era, while focusing on the ubiquity of the penal laws and the disaster for the Jacobites that was Culloden, rarely dwell on the significance and consequences of the famine of 1740-41, in which some 400,000 people are believed to have perished. Such cataclysmic events, together with the earlier post-Limerick exodus of the wild geese, whose exploits, along with those of the latter Irish Brigade, fired the imagination of our bards and poets, have left us, as Professor Hall will doubtless demonstrate, an enduring legacy of the era. In talks over the past number of years at this wonderful backdrop to our Sean Clarach evenings, we have produced irrefutable evidence that in 1691 he was born in Raw, less than a mile from here. We know that his parents were millers and that the basic structure of their mill is still extant and has given rise to the area being known as Windmill. We also know that they lived with their house on the entrance to Kilgroggan graveyard. It's still there, different roof, but the structure of the house.
It's a real honour to be here. I mean, it's Jerry's and Dorothy's house. I'm very conscious of that. And it's very unusual because not only is it a domicile and a domestic base, but also the door is open. And I do understand that that has always been the tradition of this particular house. So it's very traditional, it's a very Irish thing to do, but at the same time it's not at all common, as you know, to have that particular kind of intersection between the private and the public. So that's the first thing I want to say, that it creates what could be called a liminal space, which is the threshold between one space and the next, between the private and the public. And the threshold is a magic place. The in-betweenness is a magic place in Irish tradition, and indeed in global tradition. It's where poetry happens, it's where music happens, it's where people get ideas from. The threshold was also the space where, for example, St. Bridget, Nave Breed, was supposed to have been born, on the threshold of the house. What I'm doing here, I've called it a recital lecture. Put the two words together. Put a hyphen in between them if you wish, but it's a recital lecture. I won't talk too much, but I'll talk a little. And mainly what I want to do is I want to try and get inside Sean Clarach's head from the point of view of the tunes that he knew. Now you might say to me, that's like impossible. You know, there are no recordings, he's not alive, you know, how could you get inside his head? And it is possible actually to do it, and I'll tell you how. There's a bit of detective work involved, and I've always been interested in it. The poets that were mentioned, Philly Namoy, the Meg poets, named after the river, of which Sean Clarach was the chief, our rallying trumpet, to use one translation of what the poet Sean O'Toole Green called him. He was the father, the godfather of that particular group of poets, and they obviously looked up to him as a kind of an ordinary, as a high king of poetry, Olav na Héigshe. But at that time, people, either the poets themselves or other interested parties, would write down the words of the poetry that they composed. Now, I'm using the word poetry, I could also use the word songs, which is an interesting point, and we'll come to that in a tick. So the fact of the matter is that now, scattered throughout many sites in Ireland and in Britain, there are sheafs of manuscripts. You'll find them in the Royal Irish Academy in Dublin, in Dawson Street. Chorus, of course. She Malach Gillamar, She Mahazer Gillamar, Soon na Shane ni Voris Hain, O Kuig again Gillamar. I played like this. Isn't it? You mind doing that? Is that okay? Yeah. The White Cockade. This is a tune I see here, O'Farrell's Pocket Companion, about 1801. A piper from Clonmel named O'Farrell. We know very little about him. We do know that he was quite popular in London and used to play on the London stage for musicals and things like that at the time. And he brought out a beautiful collection of tunes, a lot of piping tunes. And sure enough, in the middle of it is a tune called The White Cockade. This is what it sounds like. So it's quite different, but it is the same tune, you see. The other one is... If you go with this one.
I also want to present you a copy of the Anne of the Church, which was compiled by Dennis Hickey, where is Dennis? The Anne of the Church, right? This is the, if I say so myself, the best parish history in Ireland, right?
Yeah.
There's 750 pages in it, 248,000 words, 400 pictures, and it's inscribed by Dennis here, and Nolan and myself. The three of us were involved in the production. So here you are.
Thank you.
This is a copy of the Anne of the Church.
Thank you very much.
It weighs 2 kilos.
Yeah.
You brought a lot of books in with you. You brought a lot of books in with you. We'll help you with the books going out.
Thank you very much. Listen, thank you so much.
That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you so much.
Wear a hat because my nickname is Pat the Hat. I usually wear it. I wear it everywhere, well, except in two places. I don't wear it in mass and I don't wear it in bed. And I sleep in both places, as I will tell you. But I'm not a stranger. I was here before. This is no reminder me. 9 years ago I was here for a concert across the way over there, and I had one of the most good and bad news events happen to me the one night. It was a charity event. Again, Noel, the word charity goes with Noel. Event in heaven, he says to me. But that night I was booked to do 2 stories. And who did I see in the audience? And you couldn't miss the man. He was a giant of a man, buried across the way over. You know who I'm about? The Bowl Oliver, with a small driver with him. Right, so I was halfway through the first story, and she was making the eclipse of the sun. He got up and walked out in the middle of the story. I battled on as best I could anyway. So at half time during the interval, my blood sugar was all over the place. So I said I'd come down to the pub to get it levelled out a bit. Up to that pub I went to get O'Brien's, and I came in the door, and who was the first man to greet me, only? The Bowl
Autumn day I saw her first anew, that her dark hair would weave the snare, that I might one day
I do a little recitation called The Cottage in the Glen. It was written by my wife.
And Sean was very friendly with the lady Margaret McAuliffe, so there'd be a lot of connections around the place. So, right, you'll work away.
The little cottage looks so neat as it nestled in the glen. Its door was always open to welcome strangers in. Its golden thatch was gleaming, I could almost say it glow. Its dirty walls were whitewashed, as white as driven snow.
Winter's gale long, long ago, when I was the little fellow, a piper wandered to our door, grey-headed, blind and yellow. And oh, how glad was my young heart, though earth and sky were dreary, to see the stranger and his dog, 'twas Quinch and Kirk O'Leary. And as he stowed away his bag, cross-barred with green and yellow, I thought and said, in Ireland's ground, there's not so fine a fellow.
One morning when I was so small, my mother half cuddled me under her shawl, saying, "Today, love, we're going to school through the fields," and we wandered along with the breeze to our heels.